Do we want to do
just
another tweet and give people a little bit longer to join us?
I'll take care of that. I'll tweet it one more time.
Okay.
But why don't we tell people a little bit more about this game and kind of what it's all about?
Okay, my slightly half asleep still version of this is it's a game about squares and friendship and loveliness, and it's a very nice story.
That is the best description I've
It
heard
is.
for that game.
Don't you just understand straight away why I get paid to write words? It makes so much sense.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you don't expect to really like relate to a bunch of shapes, but
Yeah.
like that's this game.
It's a game that makes you care about a bunch of coloured squares with no faces that never directly talk, yet they all have the most wonderful personalities.
And I think it's enough of a primer for us, so why don't we hop into it?
Let's jump in then. Let us know in the chat if the game's too loud or if we're too quiet or anything.
Yeah, I think the narration for this game definitely does it for me.
Wow. A weird first thought to have.
Yeah, it's a game that I think that narration takes it from being a good game up into being like the amazing thing that it is that everyone's sort of picked up on.
And I think there's a reason the narrator for this, Danny Wallace, ended up winning a BAFTA award for this game.
Yeah, he's very good at telling stories.
Thomas decided to start listing his observations for posterity.
He would be a great person to have
The
to,
whole
you know,
alone
tell bedtime stories to children.
Portals. They led somewhere.
Or if
Just to
Danny
work out
Wallace
where.
was narrating my life, that'd be pretty cool too.
Falling. Thomas was absolutely fantastic at falling. He was almost as good at falling as he was.
Somebody in the
at
chat mentioned the music and just really liking the music. I don't know who did the soundtrack. Do you?
David Housden did the soundtrack. It's one of my favourite bits of just what's the word I'm trying to think of? A music with no words. I don't know what that's called, but it's my favourite piece of music to write to, just because it's so quiet and floaty and just nice. It's good.
Okay, interesting. Thomas couldn't fall past this block.
Gets you in those feel parts, right?
Yeah.
Think. What if there was some kind of inverted fall? Some way to... what's the word? Jump.
One thing I really like about this game,
It worked.
and
Thomas
its opening
had solved
levels,
the great inverted fall
is just sort of how it deals with making sure that the introduction and like the tutorial levels work both for people that are avid gamers and who never play games. Like that last level there where it's talking about
big jump.
the inverted fall mystery. It's a nice way to just teach people, hey, this is how you jump,
but gently.
but doing it without, like, it gives a little
Like
bit of...
telling you this is how you jump, right?
It gives you some humour if you're someone that already knows how to jump in games.
And that's just a good game design thing, to where you don't necessarily have to tell people how to do something. It's just more showing you.
This all seemed a little dangerous. The world was not.
I don't know if you read this
unstable.
This
and it
opinion
seemed that Thomas
op-ed
could
by
let him down at any moment.
Mitch Dyer on the IGN today, where he talked
I'm
about
starting to suspect.
video games and how there's not like all that much permanence to it, to where like I could name my top 10 movies or my top 10 books, but I probably couldn't necessarily name, my top 10 games, maybe 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
I've not read that yet. I think the ones that I will, like... I think story is definitely a big factor in that for games.
Right.
I think that definitely, like, the games that I will be coming back to years down the line and saying, yes, these are my favourites, will probably be
And
things
that
like...
was kind of,
am I jumping ahead of you? I was going to say things like either Gone Home or Thomas Was Alone or things like that had
yeah,
good
that's
stories.
I totally agree with. I mean, I totally agree with that. But what it was shoot, I think I lost my train of thought on that end. I'll remember in a bit.
Permanence of games.
Was becoming more complicated.
Yeah, the permanence of games, right? But it's also how it's always about one-upping the next game, trying to do it better than the other game, or trying to do something technically better instead of trying to do like the same thing or what it's always been doing well. And I think Thomas Was Alone is a perfect example of that, to where there's nothing necessarily new technologically or graphics-wise or anything else with this game.
It was just perfecting something that existed and making it as polished as it could be, I guess.
Right. Yeah, because when you're kind of going for something that's a little bit, I'm always driving for the next bit of technology or the next, bit of graphics. It kind of gets lost because, it's so tied to like what the graphics are in that moment or what it looks like, that it's not so permanent. But something like this, to where it's more story driven and it's a little bit more unique, I guess, and a little bit more relatable, it has a little bit more permanence to it. I think that's why it's such an endearing game, and I think a lot of people who play games are drawn to it because it's a little bit different, because it's not so kind of hyper in the moment.
Definitely. Lee Alexander did a talk at Nine Worlds on a similar topic that I thought was really interesting. Was she was doing a talk where she was asking when we're going to get the Nirvana of video games, in that her comparison point was Nirvana were a British band that were very sort of rough and raw. It wasn't about the perfection of like, let's push music in new directions. It was just this very...
Yeah, let's push it in one direction.
Let's take an easy to go, like a direction that anyone could go, and just go as well as we can in that direction. And the sort of... I like this idea of video games as something that like 10, 15 years down the line I can show my children and be like, these are the games that I grew up with, and hopefully they'll get an impression of what I was like, what I was going through, the same way that I could show my children what kind of music I listen to and do the same. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
That totally does. Like, well, like think of it this way. Like, would you show your kids or show somebody else 10, 15 years later, I'm going to show them Grand Theft Auto 5.
Thomas had a new theory.
Or I'm going to show them, like, hey, this Call of Duty game that we played 10, 15 years ago.
Well, yeah, but again, that's the difference between that and, say, like, yeah. Like, I would show them, say, Beyond Good and Evil, for example, as an example of a game that... It says a lot of interesting things that I'm like, no, I could show them down the line this and be like, yeah, this is, a thing that I enjoyed.
Or like, I think I would show people this game.
This is definitely one of them, I think. Just because, like, I think this is going to age very well. Just because it's not aiming for photorealism.
Yeah.
It's, pastel colours and
I mean, they're just shapes.
how those aren't going to age nearly as badly as a lot of attempted cutting-edge 3D graphics.